Let's see, class 2 hours and there's no breaks. So I'm going to try and speak as fast as I can just to get everything in that I need to and try and teach you. Along with that, because I'm going to be talking as fast as I can so that I get everything in, please don't hesitate to interrupt. So, you know, people here, it'll be easy. If you're on the Zoom call, please use the group chat. I have it up, and Colleen is on the call with us, and if I don't see it, she'll make sure that I do know about it. So please don't hesitate to interrupt me if you have a question. This becomes a lot more important as I go through teaching you about the screens because, well, the goal of the class is for you to be able to do a project from start to finish. So when you leave, you're going to be able to build this project, and if you have gotten left behind, you don't see a screen that I'm on, you don't understand what I'm doing, then you're not going to be able to build the project. And then you're going to leave, and you're going to be frustrated, and you're going to hate the software. And it's really, really easy to use. And I'll be disappointed, you'll be disappointed. So I don't mind being interrupted. So this is a big deal. Stop me, ask me the question. And this is all about seeing the screen that I have up there. If I'm talking about something and you don't see it, maybe I don't even have it up there on the screen right, and Colleen will let me know, but shout out. So, little introduction about myself. I am the manager of REDCap here at the university. I've been here almost 20 years. Well, I've been here 20 years in some capacity or another. I've been doing data work for longer. I've been with the Clinical and Translational Sciences Center. In case you are in research and you do any work with Maria Gordon and her team down there, I was the bioinformatics manager down there when I first saw REDCap and brought it to the university. That was about 10 years ago. So my background is in data, and I will make sure that if you have any questions about me, I'll answer them as we go along. I'm going to show you a video in just a little bit. I'm hoping that everybody in the call will be able to hear. This is a work in progress on making sure that you can hear it, you know, there at home. They can hear it here, but I got to make sure you hear it at home. Show you the REDCap website. There's a lot of information on the website as a reference, so I would just want to make sure that you know where it is. We'll go over the basics on the background of REDCap, how to get an account, how to log in, password issues. I know that you have an account, obviously, you know, since you're here, but should you want an account for someone else, if you want to associate somebody to your project, you need to be able to tell them how to go about getting an account. So after we get through all that, we're going to start by creating a project shell, which is the most basic part of a REDCap project. A few fields, and then your project shell is built. And from then, we'll create our first instrument. An instrument is a form. The instrument is just the language of REDCap. REDCap refers to forms as instruments. I'll show you how to assign user rights, what the whole permissions thing is. We'll do some data entry, and we'll export some data just to make sure that you know how to access your data once you've entered it. If you don't know how to enter your data, then you're also going to be disappointed with REDCap because you built such a nice project and then you don't know how to enter your data. So just so you know, it's not a class on compliance or IRB approval, regulatory stuff. I don't know anything about those things. So don't worry about asking me those things. However, if it's data related or REDCap related, I probably have your answers. So let's try this video. I will do my best to ensure the people online hear it, but we'll give it a shot.
About 10 years ago, I took on the task to teach global development to Swedish undergraduate students. That was after having spent about 20 years together with African institutions studying hunger in Africa. So I was sort of expected to know a little about the world. And I started in our medical university, Karolinska Institute, an undergraduate course called Global Health. But when you get that opportunity, you get a little nervous. I thought these students coming to us actually have the highest grade you can get in Swedish college system. So I thought maybe they know everything I'm going to teach them about. So I did a pre-test when they came. And one of the questions from which I learned a lot was this one: which country has the highest child mortality of these 5 pairs? And I put them together so that in each pair of country, one has twice the child mortality of the other. And this means that it's much bigger the difference than the uncertainty of the data. I won't put you at a test here, but it's Turkey, which is highest there, Poland, Russia, Pakistan, and South Africa. And these were the results of the Swedish students. I did it, so I got a confidence interval, which was pretty narrow, and I got happy, of course. I had 1.8 right answer out of 5 possible. And that means that there was a place for a professor of international health and for my course. But one late night, when I was compiling the report, I really realized my discovery. I have shown that Swedish top students know statistically significantly less about the world than the chimpanzees. Because the chimpanzee would score half right. If I gave them 2 bananas with Sri Lanka and Turkey, they would be right half of the cases. But the students are not there. The problem for me was not ignorance, it was preconceived ideas. I did also an unethical study of the professors of the Karolinska Institute that hands out the Nobel Prize in medicine, and they are on par with the chimpanzee there. So this is where I realized that there was really a need to communicate, because the data of what's happening in the world and the child health of every country is very well aware. So we did this software which displays it like this. Every bubble here is a country. This country over here is China. And this is India. The size of the bubble is the population. And on this axis here, I put fertility rate. Because my students, what they said when they looked upon the world, and I asked them, what do you really think about the world? Well, I first discovered that the textbook was Tintin mainly. And they said the world is still we and them. And we is Western world, and them is third world. And what do you mean with Western world? I said, well, that's long life in small family. And third world is short life in large family. So this is what I could display here. I put fertility rate here, number of children per woman, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to about 8 children per woman. We have very good data since 1962, 1960 about, on the size of families in all countries. The error margin is narrow. Here I put life expectancy at birth, from 30 years in some countries up to about 70 years. And 1962, there was really a group of countries here that was industrialized countries, and they had small families and long lives. And these were the developing countries. They had large families and they had relatively short lives. Now, what has happened since 1962? We want to see the change. Are the students right? It's still 2 types of countries? Or have these developing countries got smaller families and they live here? Or have they got longer lives and live up there? Let's see. We start the world. And this is all UN statistic that has been available. Here we go. Can you see there? It's China. They're moving against better health. They're improving there. All the green in Latin American countries. They are moving towards smaller families. The yellow ones here are the Arabic countries, and they get larger families, but longer lives, but not larger families. The Africans are the green down here. They still remain here. This is India. Indonesia is moving on pretty fast. And in the 80s here, you have Bangladesh still among the African countries there. But now Bangladesh, it's a miracle that happens in the 80s. The imams start to promote family planning, and they move up into that corner. And in 90s, we have the terrible HIV epidemic that takes down the life expectancy of the African countries, and all the rest of the world moves up into the corner where we have long lives and small family, and we have a completely new world. Let me make a comparison directly between United States of America and Vietnam. 1964. America had small families and long life. Vietnam had large families and short lives. And this is what happens. The data during the war indicate that even with all the death, there was an improvement of life expectancy. By the end of the year, the family planning started in Vietnam, and they went for smaller families. And the United States up there is getting for longer life, keeping family size. And in the 80s now, they give up communist planning, and they go for market economy, and it moves faster even than social life. And today, we have in Vietnam the same life expectancy and the same family size here in Vietnam 2003 as in United States 1974 by the end of the war. I think we all, if we don't look in the data, we underestimate the tremendous change in Asia, which was in social change before we saw the economical change. So let's move over to another way here in which we could display the distribution in the world of the income. This is the world distribution of income of people. $1, $10, or $100 per day. There's no gap between rich and poor any longer. This is a myth. There's a little hump here. But there are people all the way. And if we look where the income ends up, the income, this is 100% of world's annual income. And the richest 20%, they take out of that about 74%. And the poorest 20%, they take about 2%. And this shows that the concept developing countries is extremely doubtful. We sort of think about aid, like these people here giving aid to these people here. But in the middle, we have most of the world population. And they have now 24% of the income. We heard it in other forms. And who are these? Where are the different countries? I can show you Africa. This is Africa. 10% of the world population, most in poverty. This is OECD, the rich country, the country club of the UN. And they are over here on this side, and quite an overlap between Africa and OECD. And this is Latin America. It has everything on this earth, from the poorest to the richest in Latin America. And on top of that, we can put East Europe, we can put East Asia, and we put South Asia. And how did it look like if we go back in time to about 1970? Then there was more of a hump. And we have most who lived in absolute poverty were Asians. The problem in the world was the poverty in Asia. And if I now let the world move forward, you will see that while population increase, there are hundreds of millions in Asia getting out of poverty, and some others get into poverty. And this is the pattern we have today. And the best projection from the World Bank is that this will happen. And we will not have a divided world. We will have most people in the middle. Of course, it's a logarithmic scale here. But our concept of economy is growth with percent. We look upon it as a possibility of percentage increase. If I change this and I take GDP per capita instead of family income, and I turn these individual data into regional data of gross domestic product, and I take the regions down here, the size of the bubble is still the population, and you have the OECD there, and you have sub-Saharan Africa there, and we take off the Arab states there, coming both from Africa and from Asia, and we put them separately, and we can expand this axis, and I can give it a new dimension here by adding the social values there, child survival. Now I have money on that axis, and I have the possibility of children to survive there. In some countries, 99.7% of children survive to 5 years of age, others only 70. And here it seems that there is a gap between OECD, Latin America, East Europe, East Asia, Arab states, South Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. The linearity is very strong between child survival and money. But let me split Sub-Saharan Africa. Health is there, and better health is up there. I can go here, and I can split Sub-Saharan Africa into its countries. And when it bursts, the size of each country bubble is the size of the population. Sierra Leone down there, Mauritius up there. Mauritius was the first country to get away with trade barriers, and they could sell their sugar, they could sell their textiles on equal terms as the people in Europe and North America. There's a huge difference between Africa, and Ghana is here in the middle. In Sierra Leone, humanitarian aid. Here in Uganda, development aid. Here, time to invest. There you can go for holiday. It's a tremendous variation within Africa, which we very often make that it's equal everything. I can split South Asia here. India is the big bubble in the middle, but huge difference between Afghanistan and Sri Lanka. And I can split Arab states. How are they? Same climate, same culture, same religion, huge difference. Even between neighbors. Yemen, civil war, United Arab Emirates money, which was quite equally and well used. Not as the myth is. And that includes all the children of the foreign workers who are in the country. Data is often better than you think. Many people say that data is bad. There is an uncertainty margin. But we can see the difference here, Cambodia, Singapore. The differences are much bigger than the weakness of the data. East Europe, Soviet economy for a long time, but they come out after 10 years very, very differently. And there is Latin America. Today we don't have to go to Cuba to find a healthy country in Latin America. Chile will have a lower child mortality than Cuba within some few years from now. And here we have high-income countries in OECD, and we get the whole pattern here of the world, which is more or less like this. And if we look at it, how it looks the world, in 1960, it starts to move, 1960. This is Mao Zedong. He brought health to China. And then he died, and then Deng Xiaoping came and brought money to China and brought them into the mainstream again. And we have seen how countries move in different directions like this. So it's sort of difficult to get an example country which shows the pattern of the world. But I would like to bring you back to about here at 1960. And I would like to compare South Korea, which is this one, with Brazil, which is this one. The label went away for me here. And I would like to compare Uganda, which is there. And I can run it forward like this. And you can see how South Korea is making a very, very fast advancement, whereas Brazil is much slower. And if we move back again here, and we put on trails on them like this, you can see again that the speed of development is very, very different. And the countries are moving more or less in the same rate as money and health. But it seems you can move much faster if you are healthy first than if you are wealthy first. And to show that, you can put on the way of United Arab Emirates. They came from here. A mineral country. They catch all the oil, they got all the money, but health cannot be bought at the supermarket. You have to invest in health. You have to get kids into schooling. You have to train health staff. You have to educate the population. And Sheikh Zayed did that in a fairly good way. And in spite of falling oil prices, he brought this country up here. So we got a much more mainstream appearance of the world, where all countries tend to use their money better than they used in the past. Now, this is more or less if you look at average data of the countries. They are like this. Now, that's dangerous to use average data because there's such a lot of difference within countries. So if I go and look here, we can see that Uganda, that today is where South Korea was 1960. If I split Uganda, there's quite a difference within Uganda. These are the quintiles of Uganda. The richest 20% of Ugandans are there, the poorest are down there. If I split South Africa, it's like this. And if I go down and look at Niger, where there was such a terrible famine, lastly, it's like this. The 20% poorest of Niger is out here, and the 20% richest of South Africa is there, and yet we tend to discuss on what solutions there should be in Africa. Everything in this world exists in Africa. And you can't discuss universal access to HIV for that quintile up here with the same strategy as down here. The improvement of the world must be highly contextualized. And it's not relevant to have it on regional level. We must be much more detailed. We find that students get very excited when they can use this. And even more policymakers and the corporate sectors would like to see how the world is changing. Now, why doesn't this take place? Why are we not using the data we have? We have data in the United Nations, in the national statistical agencies, and in universities and other non-governmental organizations, because the data is hidden down in the databases. And the public is there, and the internet is there, but we have still not used it effectively. All that information we saw changing in the world does not include publicly funded statistics. There are some web pages like this, but they take some nourishment down from the databases, but people put prices on them, stupid passwords and boring statistics. And this won't work. So what is needed? We have the databases. It's not a new database you need. We have wonderful design tools, and more are added up here. So we started a non-profit venture, which we called Linking Data to Design. We call it Gapminder, from London Underground, where they warn you, mind the gap. So we thought Gapminder was appropriate. And we started to write software which could link the data like this. And it wasn't that difficult. It took some person years. And we have produced animations. You can take a data set and put it there. We are liberating UN data. Some few UN organizations, some countries accept that their databases can go out on the world. But what we really need is, of course, a search function. A search function where we can copy the data up to a searchable format and get it out in the world. And what do we hear when we go around? I've done anthropology on the main statistical units. Everyone says it's impossible. This can't be done. Our information is so peculiar and detailed, so that cannot be searched as other can be searched. We cannot give the data free to the students, free to the entrepreneurs of the world. But this is what we would like to see, isn't it? The publicly funded data is down here, and we would like flowers to grow out on the net. And one of the crucial points is to make them searchable, and then people can use the different design tool to animate it there. And I have a pretty good news for you. I have a good news that the present new head of UN Statistics, he doesn't say it's impossible. He only says we can't do it. And that's a quite clever guy. Huh? So we can see a lot happening in data in the coming years. We will be able to look at income distributions in completely new ways. This is the income distribution of China, 1970. This is the income distribution of the United States, 1970. Almost no overlap. Almost no overlap. And what has happened? What has happened is this, that China is growing, it's not so equal any longer, and it's appearing here, overlooking the United States, almost like a ghost, isn't it? Huh? It's pretty scary. But I think it's very important to have all this information. We need really to see it. And instead of looking at this, I would like to end up by showing the internet users per 1,000. In this software, we access about 500 variables from all the countries quite easily. It takes some time to change for this. But on the axes, you can quite easily get any variable you would like to have. And the thing would be to get up the databases free, to get them searchable, and with a second click to get them into the graphic formats where you can instantly understand them. Now, the statisticians doesn't like it because they say that this will not this will not show the reality. We have to have statistical analytical methods. But this is hypothesis generating. I end now with a world there the internet are coming, the number of internet users are going up like this. This is the GDP per capita, and it's a new technology coming in, but amazingly how well it fits to the economy of the countries. That's why the $100 computer will be so important. But it's a nice tendency. It is as if the world is flattening off, isn't it? These countries are lifting more than the economy, and will be very interesting to follow this over the year, as I would like you to be able to do with all the publicly funded data. Thank you very much.
All right, so the deal was Hans was talking with the students, and they had this view of the world. And, you know, it's like anybody in research. I mean, you have this idea about some topic, and, of course, his students thought they had the right view, but what they wanted to do is prove it, because that's what you need. You need the data. You need to be able to take a look at the data, prove or disprove. So Hans has all this data from all over the world. And he shows that, in fact, that the premise that there are like two different divisions of the world, those with large families and that affect the mortality, or small families that affect mortality. Anyway, he had all this data, and he was able to prove a point with this data. So I mean, I have gotten REDCap because I see what you all saw in that video. When I was doing projects before REDCap, it's very, very difficult. I would build databases for people and interfaces so they could enter their data. But most researchers would use Excel spreadsheets because that's really all you had. And if you wanted to collaborate with somebody at a different institution, it was very difficult. You were looking at trying to maybe mail forms back and forth. Or if you had a lot of money, maybe you tried to put up a website. Security was an issue. So I see REDCap, and I'm like, I could see the possibilities right away. And when I saw this video of Hans, I'm like, this is exactly why I brought REDCap here. So he needed worldwide data to prove his point. So here you are. You have an idea for a project. You want to prove something about the world, or you want to affect the world. Maybe you have an interest about AIDS in Africa, or a disease that's local somewhere. It's your passion. And you're thinking, I guess I got to go there. I got to pick up, I got to move, I got to, work with people over there. But in fact, in today's world, with REDCap, if you want to do research, you don't have to leave the university, and you can collaborate with anybody, anywhere in the world, because you'll find that REDCap works anywhere in the world that has internet access. And I will tell you, as we get a little further, that you don't even need internet access. So if you had that vision like Hans did, or wanted to prove that, you could accumulate the data from anywhere in the world to prove or disprove that. Now, he had the UN, which was very handy because everybody sent their information into the UN. But you are no longer limited in the kind of project that you involve yourself with, and you can collect data from anywhere in the world. So REDCap was developed primarily at Vanderbilt University, funded by the NIH, and it was meant for research studies originally. It's just a tool that lets you build online data collection instruments and surveys. So a data collection instrument is a form, and a survey is a data collection instrument with a button turned on. That's all, the only difference about them. It's web-based and works with all browsers. So you don't have to worry about whether you've got an Apple computer and you're using Safari, what OS you might have. Is it Chrome? Can you use Firefox? It doesn't matter. You can use whatever you want. You can access your project anywhere that has internet access. Anytime. REDCap's up 24 hours a day and available to you, which works out handy because we have projects running in Africa. We have them running in Israel. We had them running in Morocco, Florida, all over the world. So you can get at it anytime you want. It doesn't require any technical knowledge. You're all here. I have no idea what your background is, but it doesn't matter. You're going to be able to build a REDCap project and manage it when you leave here. It is secure. It is HIPAA compliant. So if you're doing any kind of clinical research and taking in any kind of protected health information, you're covered. And it can capture any kind of data. And we'll see that as we build the project. I'm going to show you all these different types of fields that you can use to collect any kind of data that you want. So even though it's most frequently used for clinical and research purposes, you can use it for any kind of database use. So if you had a quality control study or an animal study, something along those lines, or administrative tracking project. College of Agriculture and Life Sciences uses it to track alumni, and it just sets out surveys regularly, collect all the data. No research involved, but it's a perfect database for use in a project like that. If you registered for the class online, you used a REDCap survey, get a feedback survey after class, Colleen. It will be a REDCap survey instrument turned into a survey. One thing I want to point out that is, I think, one of the most important pieces is when they built this, they had investigators and coordinators and physicians, obviously database people, engineers, but to me, one of the key members of the team that was part of building this is the biostatisticians. Because if you're doing any kind of data collection and you want to analyze it afterwards, you need to make sure that you have a very easy way to do that analyzation. So we will find out when we get to exporting data that REDCap works with all the major software packages directly. And we'll demonstrate that when we do our data export. This is a map I took almost 2 years ago now, and it doesn't matter that it's not current because it shows exactly what I want it to show, and that is these are all instances, centers that are running their own instance of REDCap. So as you can see, I mean, it's all over the world. REDCap does come in different languages for the interface. So if you are in Brazil, you can open up REDCap and you will see the site in Spanish or Portuguese or whatever that you need. If you're in Japan, it will be in Japanese. So the interface itself can be in different languages. The REDCap website, I'm going to take you there And let's just take a look at what we see here. Okay. All right. So I am part of the Center for Biomedical Informatics and Biostatistics, called CB2, which is fairly easy to remember, CB2. CB2 does a lot of different types of data work, data analysis, but I am under services and tools. So if you come to the Center for Biomedical Informatics and go to services and tools, on the very top left, you will see surveys and clinical databases, REDCap, and this is the REDCap homepage. Okay, so just to get a sense of what all is here, there is just a lot of information about REDCap here at the university. If you want to point anyone in this direction that wants to know something about REDCap, you can send them here. One of the things I do want to point out when we get to it, if you have somebody that wants an account, there's a button right here for a new account. And then click that button, fill out the few fields, and we'll set them up with an account ASAP. At the bottom, there are two places that you can find this. One is on the web page. That is a REDCap boilerplate language. This is in case you're doing a grant submission and you need some kind of verbiage, snippet to put in your submission. You can download this document and it will give you some information so you can plug it in, and hopefully that will help you. Up on the left, we have a menu running down here. A couple things to point out. We do have a frequently asked questions tab and a training tab, and the training is just what we offer in class. The video tutorials, the frequently asked questions and the video tutorials may be helpful. We're trying to build on those to be able to enhance what you'll find in REDCap. There is an add-on that you can use for REDCap. They are called external modules, and there's a number of them. We list all the available external modules that you can select from. If you click on this, it gives you a list of all these external modules. And every Thursday at 1 o'clock, we have what's called the Red Zone. I'll point this out again once we log in. And at those little Zoom sessions, we do demonstrate an external module or some other feature that is not something that we talk about. We've added a couple things relatively recently. One is something called version changes. So REDCap gets updated almost every week, and some people would like to know what actually changed. Mostly, they are bug fixes. Small bug fixes that get introduced with all these changes, and they find something fairly obscure. But they put out a new version, and I put it in. However, every so often, there is new functionality, and so I will list the new functionality so that people will know that it's there. Also, last week, we had a situation. It was really one of the first times we've ever had something like this happen, where REDCap went down and up and down and up. I've never experienced it here in this way. So we added a new page here if you need to know, there's a link. It will tell you that we know that the server is online or offline. So if you need to know, if you're questioning whether you're getting an error that nobody else is getting or whether you should report it, you can come over to the status tab on our website and you'll know whether or not we're online. All right. So let's go ahead and from here, let's go ahead and open up REDCap and get started. So REDCap is redcap.uahs.arizona.edu. It would take you to your login page and go ahead and log in from there. Now when I log in, it takes me to my projects page. So you can, if you have logged in and you're at my projects page, up at top there are these little areas here. They're like tabs, and my projects is this tab. This will show you all the projects that you are associated to or you have created. So you probably see nothing there unless you've been working with REDCap before. I think some of you have. And you will probably, however, see the public projects down here. There's 3 example databases, projects. You can open them. They're read-only. They're meant to try and give you a little help about using REDCap. If you want to get more comprehensive ideas about using REDCap, however, there's a better way, I think, and I'll show you that in just a few minutes. But you should probably see this public projects. Also, just so you know, you would be able to see your projects in anything you've been associated to, but you would never be able to see anyone else's projects unless you were associated. You are completely walled off from everyone else, and they are walled off from you. So your projects and your data are always secure to you. So up at the top, I'm going to just go over to this home tab here so you can see. This talks about our weekly Red Zone call that happens every Thursday at 1 o'clock. You can click on that link to join the Zoom session, and we answer questions for people that are having problems with their project. So it's a great way if you want to get on and just ask a question, or you're stumped by something and just need a little help and don't want to go through the conversation that would take place with email. This is a great way to ask questions. And you can actually submit a question before class, and we'll be glad to take a look at it so we make sure we answer it during the class or during the conference. If you need an account, you can also find the link for the request form here. So if you want to click on it, you can grab the link and then send it to somebody. And if you want to register for another training session, you can do that. A little bit up at the top here, in the header, it tells you what version we are running and when it was installed. So if you log in, one day you may look, and this happened relatively recently. People logged in one day and all of a sudden they thought that they could no longer edit any of their instruments on their project. And so they sent me an email, something's happened. I no longer have permissions, or something has happened and I can't edit my project. So if they would have looked, just out of curiosity, out on the home page, they would have seen that there was an update done the night before or since they logged in last, which would have been a clue, but still they might have thought that they couldn't actually edit their instruments. In fact, there was just a change in how it looked. Everything was still there. Nothing was missing. They added some new icons. And so instead of an icon that was there before, it was an icon in a tab. It just was a different look to it. So this tells you what version we are running and what data was installed. A little bit more about why the versions matter. So you have an account on my server. You could very well end up collaborating with somebody from some other institution that has REDCap. Just because you have an account here does not mean you have an account there. So you can't use your login from here to log in there. Along with that, just because you can see what you see here at the University of Arizona does not mean you will see exactly the same thing at another institution that you're collaborating with, especially if they have less REDCap support. They may be 4, 5, 6 versions behind. They may not have upgraded REDCap for 2 or 3 months until Vanderbilt made it extremely easy to do upgrades. I probably did upgrades only if I found out there was brand new functionality or 3 or 4 months had passed, and then I would do an upgrade. So something that you have here, you may possibly not see somewhere else. Especially once we start talking about external modules, I think that different institutions, external modules are something, and again, external modules are little plugins that we sort of talk about in the advanced class, but it's helpful to know that if you start using an external module, you can't be sure that a different institution is using that external module. I go out about every week and search for any new modules, and if I see something I think somebody would like, I bring it into the University of Arizona so that you can use it. Doesn't mean I know how to use it, but it looked like it would be pretty cool. All right. Underneath that, just so you know, there's this warning sign, and I don't want anyone to be alarmed by this. This warning sign is just that my server meets all the requirements for HIPAA and is secured, encrypted, and your data is safe on my server. So I meet HIPAA requirements. If you print off your data on a spreadsheet, go over to Starbucks, sit down, have a cup of coffee, leave your spreadsheet on the table, and walk away, and you've released PHI, that is on you. There's only so much I can do. I just want to make sure you know you're secure here, but once your data leaves with you somehow, that responsibility would be on you about whether or not it gets exposed or not. So I've done my part, and then you do your part. So that's PHI. Walking across the top here on these little links, I'm going to go to the help and frequently asked questions. I will tell you that this is awesome, very comprehensive. I use this all the time. You can get at it either using the little button here and scroll for what you're looking for a topic, or you can just put in keywords and search for it. So I highly recommend this for help and frequently asked questions. There is also a training video, a set of training videos. They're very short. should you want to just hop around and, you know, you don't want to take, you don't have time to take another class or whatever, you just want some information about a specific topic, you can come here, play the short video, and hopefully it will help you or at least get you along in the right direction. Next to that is something called Send It. Now, Send It is an email program. And so I know you're thinking, okay, well, I've got Outlook. I'll go ahead and check my email real quick since I don't need to listen to Send It. Actually, Send It is secured and encrypted. I'll explain how it works so you'll understand, but it's secure and it will let you transfer files up to 20 gigabytes. So it's way more than your email program would allow. What happens is you will come through this, you will decide who you're sending the email to and put in a subject and select a file, upload it, and then you'll send it. And you can decide whether or not you want to receive confirmation that they received it. Once they open it, then you would receive confirmation. You can also decide on an expiration date, and I'll explain that now. So what happens is, person on the other end doesn't get the file. They get a link, and they get a password. So they get two emails, the link and the password. They need both. They click on the link. It prompts them for the password. They put in the password, which creates a secure tunnel. And then when they click on the link, it will allow them to download that file that you want them to have. So the file actually resides on my computer, my server, in REDCap until the user, you know, goes through this action. However, you also don't want me to have your file indefinitely. Not that I know that it's there, but you pick an expiration date and I can hold it on my server for up to 14 days. If you need it longer than that, then you need to come back and upload it again and send it again. But at the end of the time period, the file dissolves and I have no access to it. I have been asked in the past, I can't find a file. I used Send It. Would you happen to have it on your server? And the answer is no. At the end of the expiration date, it's gone, so I can't recover it for you. All right, let's Send It. Next to that is Messenger. If you have a message, you will see a little exclamation mark. You won't see this control center. If you click on Messenger, you will see a list of conversations that you can have. I mean, you all have instant messaging kind of clients on your computer. I'm sure you've used them. This is meant to kind of keep conversations about a certain topic within your group rather than pollute your personal message system with stuff about REDCap. I mean, whether you use it or don't, it's up to you. The thing I do want to point out, however, are the notifications. There are two kinds of notification, system and general. And if REDCap comes out with something where they're releasing fireworks and they're just so excited about this new functionality, they are going to put out a system notification. And so you'll all see that. It will come along with a version upgrade. So if I do a version upgrade and it contains something fabulous, then you'll see it. General notifications are things that my team sends out, and they basically will alert you to the Red Zone meetings and what we're going to talk about at the Red Zone meeting. The last general notification that went out, I put out yesterday, and it was simply to make sure people knew that the issues that happened last week had been resolved. So this will stay on here probably for another couple days, and then I'll take it off. So those are general and system notifications, and that's Messenger. Yes? Yeah. No. No, you can send. Question was, is there a restriction on what kind of files that you can use for send it? And there is no restriction. You can send JPEGs, PNGs, Excel documents, Word documents, any type of file. It doesn't matter. Zip files, anything. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to close out Messenger, and I'm going to open up a new project. Everyone should see this new project. If you don't, then let me know. Go to the new project, and this is going to allow us to create our project shell. So I'm going to start by, we're going to be working off of this sheet that was in the back. This is the drug study. Hopefully those of you online have downloaded that. It's like a case report form, and we're going to build all the fields that will allow us to collect the data for that study. So first I need a title. I'm going to call this drug study, and I'm going to append it with my initials and date. Which is not important for you. I need to do it because I create these things constantly for class. I just want to make sure that if I have to refer to this, I know what date I'm talking. So the purpose of the project, you're going to use practice just for fun. We're all going to use practice just for fun. I do want to point out, however, that if you select research, there will be some other fields that will pop up here, and I want you to see that they are generally optional, except for this area right here where they ask you to specify the purpose of the research. You will need to check one of those boxes and make sure that they know what you're using this for in regards to research. But, yes?
And are these REDCap asking about research, or are they?
Good question. So the question is, are these Vanderbilt/REDCap fields that you're indicating, or are they simply just for the University of Arizona? They are REDCap. Vanderbilt, it allows them to possibly get an idea of how it's being used for research. They have no access to anything beyond how we are using this for research. And then going down here a little bit, what I do want to point out is I had mentioned before that there are these public projects in your My Projects file that are read-only and you could poke around. However, there is a radio button here that says Use Template. Choose one below. If you click on that, it's going to light up this window down here, and there are all kinds of example databases that you can not only see, but you could possibly use if you wanted to jumpstart a project. So if you wanted something that had surveys and a longitudinal study, you can read what is in these. You might want to grab the template instead of starting from scratch. So we, however, are going to create an empty project to get started. Once we have create an empty project and we have practice just for fun, then I will click on create a project, and now we have our project started. So the The project shell is complete. We have a project in place. Now we're going to start filling it in. First thing we're going to do is use something called the Online Designer. The Online Designer is, let me just step back 1 second. The right-hand side of this window, of this page that you're looking at, the right-hand side here is your workspace. Everything that relates to the architecture of your project is here. Anything about creating an instrument, adding fields, building in events for a project in a longitudinal study, which we will talk about at some point. All of those features are found on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side on this menu are links that will allow you to talk to the project after you've built it. So, for example, you'll see Add Edit Records here, which lets you obviously add data to your project. There's Data Reports. So if you want to create a report from your project, all of these are talking to the project after you've built it. So we're going to use the Online Designer button, which is right here, or you can use the Designer link up here in the top left, just so you know they're exactly the same. So I'll go to the Online Designer and it will take me to the Online Designer page, and you start out with a link here that says My First Instrument with one field in it. Now, if I look at my CRF here, I see Screening Form at the top. I don't see any My First Instrument. So my form, I would like to call a Screening Form. So I want to change the name of this My First Instrument. To do that, you'd think you just click on the link, but you don't. Come over here to the button on the right where it says Choose Action. Click on that, and you'll see Rename. And then we will rename this and call it Screening Form. And save it. And now you have something that makes sense to your project. I can't tell you how many times somebody has asked me for help, and I have looked at their project and they have 10 or 12 different instruments in their project, and their very first one is My First Instrument because they don't know how to change the name. So just think how far ahead you are now, and you've only been here. What? Is there metadata associated to the form at this point? Yeah, there is. It's available on with the, about that instrument. Yes. You're essentially. All right, so this is a coding question. Are you a coder? Are you a stats person? Are you a... Let's say yes. All right, that's fine. All right, question is about coding. It's about using names and references and whatever. And metadata. For those of you that don't know what metadata is just sort of a broad description of a piece of data, but a little bit more in depth, but doesn't really hold any actual data. It's just a description of an instrument or field or whatever. So, and the question is sort of regarding coding. There is a very limited ability to do any kind of coding in REDCap. there is a huge ability for us to do coding. We can help code things for your project, but you have limited ability. Now, having said that, the reason I asked if you were a stats person, and this is outside the scope of the class, but that's all right. You asked, and I'll try and answer in a way that, yeah.
We can answer it later.
Well, that's all right. But REDCap does have an API, an application programming interface, that lets you talk to other projects, and there are a number of statisticians, biostatisticians that are using that interface to talk back and forth to the project. So R, which is a free stats program, they are using that and then talking back and forth to sending data to their project and analyzing data using that programming interface. So there is some access to some of that, but I'm not sure on what level you were thinking, but we'll see as we go along.
So I guess and we're really trying to cap, and then me or someone else brings up something that you do.
Yes. Point of it is to create an interface so people can enter data into it or to upload data into it, and then subsequently it can be analyzed downstream. Okay, so I want to add some fields to my screening form. So I'm going to click on the link for the screening form, and it opens up and shows me that it's ready to for me to add fields. It starts out with one field, however, called the record ID. Every database has one unique field that all instruments, not all records, but all instruments must reference to be related. And in this case, it's the record ID. Now, just because we see the record ID, it doesn't mean we have to call it the record ID. We can change the name, we could change the variable name. However, the record ID must exist. On our CRF here, on our form that if you are in the Zoom session that you downloaded, there is a place that says subject number. So basically we want to reference the subject number for all of our data, not a record ID. It would be more useful for subject ID. So I would like to edit this, and to do that I click on the pencil that is there, and there's a little pencil. I click on that and it opens up a window, and this is something we'll be using, throughout the day. First, there's a field label. The field label is something that you can put as much text as you want. It is meant to be descriptive for those people who are looking at your instrument and want to know what the heck they're supposed to put in there for an answer. What are you asking me? Next to that is something called a variable name. Now, this should be shorter, less than 26 characters ideally. The reason it should be less than 26 characters is if you plan on using a statistics program for analysis, frequently the statistics program will truncate after 26 characters, and you'll find yourself with possibly some duplicate variable names, depending on how you did it. It's just a bad way of going about it to have long variable names. The variable name is what is attached to your data. So in this case, I want to change my field label here to subject number. Okay, that's what I want to see. And for my variable name, I'm going to type that exactly the way I typed it in the field label. Now, as soon as I leave the variable name field, you will see it change And the capital S is gone, the capital N is gone, and the space between the T and the N for subject number is gone. It's replaced with an underscore. So in a database, they don't care about capitals, and they do care about spaces. They will not allow spaces. So I just want you to see that you don't have to worry about how you type in your variable name. Type in anything you want. Free type. When you get out of it, REDCap will make sure that it's saved in a form that is acceptable to the database. So it replaces those spaces with underscores. So I'll save this, and now I've got a subject number for my record ID, which makes more sense in the context of my project. Okay, so then I want to create a new field, and underneath that is a button that says Add Field. Click on that Add Field, and I want to make this a text box. I have all kinds of choices for field types. Let's start with text box. And for field label, I'm going to type in first name. And for a variable name, I'm going to type in first name, and do this just the way I did the field label. First name and last name, if you will use the variables that I use. After that, I don't care. But first name and last name use the same variable name that I do. And you'll see why once we finish the form. Okay, so I'm going to save this. And I see that I've got a place that I can collect data for a first name. Underneath that, I'll add another field, and I'll make this a text box also, and I'll say last name, and a variable name, last name. Okay, first name, last name. Both variables. If you look at your form, you'll see the label, and up above you'll see the variable, so that if you ever need to reference the variable, you'll be able to see what it is. Okay. Oh, Olivia, should you be marking identifiers and identifiers? Excellent question. Hold on to it just 1 second. Olivia is, and the Zoom session is asking a very good question about protected health information, and should you be worried about that. I'm going to add a field underneath last name. Again, I'm following this, and I'm going to leave this a text box, and this time I'm going to type in date of birth. And I'll come over to my variable name. You can put whatever you want now. And we're going to add something new that we didn't use before, and that's this validation option. And if I click on this drop down, you will see there are all kinds of formatting capabilities. I'm going to select date and MDY, month, day, year. You can select any date format that you want. Once you select a date format, though, stay with it throughout your project. The reason is when you, let's say you have a project and you want the date of birth, and then you're going to draw some labs. And you get the date of the labs, and you want to know what their age was when those labs were drawn. You'll be able to do a calculated field to show the difference between the two ages, or two dates. But you won't be able to run it unless they're in the same format. So make sure that your dates, whatever you choose, you just stay with that format. And I'm going to save that. And now you'll see there is a date field. There's a little date picker that you can click on. There's a little today button, so you could fill it in with today, and it tells you that this is a month, day, year format. So that's your date of birth. I want to go back to my date of birth field here and edit this a second. I want to point out a couple things. First of all, I want to address Olivia's question about identifiers. Now, it's very important that you, where necessary, you de-identify your data. You do not share protected health information. So, as part of that process, you would want to flag fields that are identifiers. So here you will see there is an option called identifier. You would want to set this to yes. This is an identifier, and save it. And downstream, you will have the option of de-identifying your data, and it will remove the data for all of the flagged fields. Or if someone does not have permissions for identifiable data, they will not be able to see this information. Now, in regards to Olivia's question, just so you know, yes, first name and last name would be identifiers too. I'm not going to go through and do every field to show an identifier. You can figure that out and do that yourself, just for interest of time. But I'm glad she brought it up. Yes?
I'm sorry.
No.
Another question is, let's say that you selected and
Uh-huh.
then you you're in another country and they look different than that, and you decide to change the entire database. There's already data there. Will it, but I'm specifically with regards to yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, can you do this in bulk when creating, editing an instrument?
Or
Bulk
or you
instrument.
change the format,
Hang on, Olivia, I'll answer your question. So the question is, you've got a big project and you've set all your dates to month, day, year, and let's say you have 6 or 7 different dates in there. And then, like we are, we're doing a project over in Israel where the dates would be maybe year, month, day, or something like that. Can you go through after you've started entering data and change the format of those dates to year, month, day? The answer is yes. You can change the format because that's really what it is. It's a format. Actually, the database is decided its own way that it's going to hold it. So, yeah. So you can change that. Can you do identifiers in bulk? Let me address that in just a second. I'll show you one way that you can handle identifiers and doing something in bulk. While I'm here on the date of birth field, if I'm going to use the date of birth in a calculation to find age, then I absolutely need this date of birth. So I need to make it a required field. So there is an option here for required, and you can select yes and save that. When you do that, you'll see a little area down here that says must provide value, this little red spot, so you'll know that it's a required field. Now, I'm going to add a couple more fields, Olivia, and then I'll get back to your question. I'm going to add a field underneath date of birth, and I'm going to change this field type now to radio button single answer. Okay, 5th one down, I think, radio button single answer, and I'll say gender. And for my variable name, I'll say gender. You can put whatever you want. But now you'll see there's another little sub-window that shows up here called choices. This is new. So in the choices, we're going to put male and hit enter and put female. All right. Now, as soon as I click outside that window, you're going to see a box pop up. I think you'll find over a period of time of using REDCap, after multiple option buttons and check boxes, that you'll get extremely irritated at this. But you'll see it every single time you create this, because it wants you to know that it's creating a raw value in the database for your selections. So what that means is the database, when you do analysis, you do not want to analyze text. You only want to analyze numbers. So, but you want to see the text, male and female, but in the database, for a value, it is going to hold the numeric, and when you do your data export, it will export ones and twos. So your biostatistician will be able to analyze the numerics rather than the text. So if I close this, you'll now see that there is a 1 and a 2 in front of this. You could do this yourself by just, if you decided that you wanted no answer. A lot of times people like using the number 9 for no answer. So you could put in 9 with a comma and no response and save it. Okay, so there's your buttons, your option buttons. If you decide that you don't like the order of these, however, so if we come back in here to edit these, and I want female first instead of male, and I've started to collect data, you do not want to renumber these, because the numbers are what's holding the data. You've then destroyed the link between the data and the number that you have been doing. But you can change the order of this just by how it looks here. So if you just cut and paste and reorder it here, now you will see female first. So this comes up for me when I'm handling a project that has multiple institutions or centers that they're working with, and they want to select what center somebody's being seen at. And the project grows, and they're adding new centers to that, but they want it alphabetized. So no problem. You just add the new ones at the bottom, let it auto number, because the number, refers to the text, but it doesn't have to be numbered correctly. All you want to do is then cut and paste so it is visually in the right order. So you don't change numbers after you've started to collect data. I'm going to add a field under gender, and I'm going to make this a checkbox, multiple answer, and I'm going to call this, oh, I'm sorry. Before I get there, I'm going to do a drop-down. Drop-down box, single answer, drop-down list, single answer, and I'll put in ethnicity. And some kind of variable. And then for my choices, I'll put Hispanic, hit enter, and put non-Hispanic. And save it. And again, normally I would be identifying, indicating these are identifiers. But since Olivia asked me about doing this in bulk, I will show you in a minute how you can kind of go through and select what is an identifier. Yes.
I mean, for the beginner, but let's say you wanted to remove an option.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And I've been working with a database software, and you're not really allowed to remove options. So if you remove an option, it takes it off. What happens?
All right. So there's a couple questions here within this one question, and I'll repeat it. Oh, no, that's all right. No, I'm glad. So the question is, you have these options, whether it be an option button, drop down, or when we get there, a checkbox. If you decide that you want to delete and or hide a selection, what happens with the data that was associated to it? So, let's talk about data first and how it relates to the user interface. I would have gotten here anyway, so we're just a step earlier. So I have two servers. I have a web server, which is what you're looking at here, where you see all the fields that you're creating. And I have a database, so that when you enter your data, all your data flows into a database. The two servers talk to each other. The fields know what the values are, knows the variables, and they plug them in over here in the database. And they talk back and forth. Now, if you delete a field that is holding data, you have not deleted the data. You've just disconnected those two objects, the data in the database and the field on the web server. Unless you specifically say you want to delete data, it disconnects. The value of that is, and I've had this happen many times, somebody accidentally deletes a field or makes a change, whatever, and their data disappears. Let's say you decide to rename your field gender, and you want to call it sex, and you've already you got 5 records in there, and you say, yeah, I want to call it sex, so you rename the variable sex, and then you go looking back and all your data is gone. And you're thinking, I just deleted 5 pieces of data accidentally. You did not. If you go back and rename your variable gender, they'll all show up again, because all you did is change the disconnection. So, let's see. So you've disconnected, the hide. So the options. So the reason I want to make such a point about not changing numbers after you started collecting data, excuse me, is that those numbers are what's holding the data. And if you change them, visually, they're referring to something else. There is a way to hide options rather than delete them. Again, if you delete the option, you've not deleted the data, but you've left orphan data, which you might end up recovering and not wanting. And there may be situations where you don't want your user to see an option because it's obsolete, but yet you do want to do analysis on that, but you don't want to let it sit out there for somebody to see. I had this happen to me. Colleen and we have all of these classes, and you register, and so I decided that I didn't want people to be confused, so I just would delete the options for the class once we took them. She wanted to go back in and indicate if people attended or not. Well, she no longer had a way of knowing what class was what because I deleted the text and the number of what that referenced. The data was there, but so there is a way to hide, and if you'll wait till we get to action tags, and in case anybody's not coming to any of the more advanced classes, then just remember action tags if you want to hide a response. Okay. After ethnicity, I'm going to, and I haven't forgotten you, Olivia. After ethnicity, I'm going to add a field here, and this time I'm going to make it a drop-down. Multiple, or checkbox rather. Checkbox, multiple answer. And this is going to be race, and for a variable name, whatever you want to call it, I'll call it race. And I'm going to type in all these options because I want to demonstrate something downstream. You don't have to type all of these in if you don't want. Okay, so here's my options. As soon as I leave, it's going to number them. All right, so I'm going to save this, take a look. Okay, now I've got check boxes as compared to option boxes. Check boxes, I can check as many as I want. In my case here, this would be in case I wanted to collect all the different races somebody identifies with rather than if they wanted to identify with just one race. That would depend on your project, whether you would use an option, radio button, or a checkbox. So if you make a selection and you decide that it's a mistake or you need to remove it, all you have to do is uncheck it. That deletes the data that was there. If you're on a drop-down and you've selected something and you make a mistake and you need to delete it, just select the blank. But if you're in an option button, a radio button, and you click on this and you're trying to figure out how do I get rid of this, this is a mistake, you can't click on it. Over on the right, you'll see a little link that says reset. Click on the reset, and that will get rid of all the other options and blank it out for you. Okay, I'm going to add a field underneath race. I'm going to go back to my text box here, call this other race, and a variable name, other race. And save that. Now I've got a text box down here that if you come to the, or you take the intermediate class, we talk about branching logic, which will show or hide this field based on the selection above it. Otherwise, you do have a place to enter data for other if you don't know how to use branching logic. And if you aren't taking the class, then just look up branching logic and it will explain. It's a very easy concept. Underneath other race, I'm going to add one more field, and this will be a text box also. And this is email address and a variable name, email. And I do want to point out here this validation option for email. If you're going to take the intermediate class where we get into surveys, if you will please just leave this blank, okay? Put none for validation. Normally, however, you would use email What that will do is ensure that there are no mistakes and that you don't do something like I might do if I'm trying to multitask. I might put johndoe.email.arizona.edu instead of johndoe@email. So it ensures that there's a proper @ sign and make sure that the format is, of course, it's not going to know whether it's an accurate email address, but it will make sure that you don't mess up the format. So, but if you're coming to the survey class, just leave it none for now and save it. All right, so I've got that. I'm going to go to my project setup tab here, and hopefully I remember. Oh, okay. So you see your online designer button underneath this design your data collection instruments. There's an online designer. Underneath that, there's a little link that says check for identifiers page. If you click on that, it shows you all these fields that it pretty much guesses are identifiers. So you can go in and check those in bulk so that you can update your identifiers. So that's how you can handle it in bulk. And non-binary, undefined, prefer not to answer. I'm not quite sure what the question is, but hopefully I addressed that in how you set up the radio buttons. If not, just elaborate on that, Olivia, and I'll be happy to answer your question. All right, I'm going to go back to my online designer here. I want to add a new instrument. So the instrument that we had so far, okay, I see what you're saying. We started out with a form that already existed. Now we're going to create a new form, and to do that, above there is a green button that says create a new instrument from scratch. So if we click on create, it lights up here and gives you a place to add a new instrument. So this is how you add a new instrument. And we're going to call this consent form and create this. Okay, so now you can see that we have a consent form. I'm going to step back to the screening form real quick and try to make sure that I answer Olivia's question online. For gender, there is certainly the ability to, well, at the bottom, answer non-binary, transgender, fine. And this is a place where you could add other. Once you leave this, you'll see that it's auto-numbered these. Now, what it did, what I do want to show you, is it started numbering after 9. So if you wanted to make these 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you'd have to go back in and change them because it automatically starts numbering after the highest number that is there. But in my case, I don't really care about what the value is as long as when the time comes to analyze, I know what it is. So in this case, I want my other or something like that. Let's say I want it down below. I just resort it and save. So now I have multiple options here. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Down below here at the bottom of this on our screening form, I'm going to add a new type of field. This is going to be a matrix of fields. I click on that button, and I always have a bit of a hard time describing a matrix, but it's basically a table, but you'll see what it looks like when we're done. So for a matrix header, I'm going to type what it says there, which is please provide the patient's weekly schedule. Okay, and again, this matrix header is optional, but I do want you to see how this works in case you like the concept of matrix. The first thing I'm going to do, not because it's a matrix, just so I show you, is there is a checkbox here that says enable auto naming of variable. All right, I'm going to check that, and you're going to immediately see a big warning sign come up. Best practices suggest it's best to leave this off. So yes, I realize that. I'm going to turn it on though, so you know exactly what it is that you're not using. So I'm going to enable it, and then for a field label, I'm going to use what I have on my sheet there. First is walking. Now, after I've typed in walking, notice the variable name typed itself in. You didn't have to type it in. If I add a row below that by clicking on the button below it, and I say jogging, types in the variable name itself. So you can see that what it does is auto-fill the variable name based on the field label. That could be, in this case, very time, save time. But on the other hand, if you had big, long field labels, then you'd end up with big, long variable names, and that would not be a good idea. That's why they give you the warning. So underneath walking, jogging, I'll put running, and then one more row underneath that, and no exercise. Okay, so now I've got my fields. Now I want my choices. I'll come down to this choice area, and I'm just going to put the days of the week. Sunday, Monday. Okay. I just put the days of the week in there. And finally, I need a matrix group name right here at the bottom. There's a blank for that, and I'll just put exercise and save it. And here's my matrix. So you've all seen things like this before. It allows you to, have the same responses over and over and over again. So if I want to say I walk on Sunday, jog on Monday, run on Tuesday, and I walk on Wednesday, well, now I've got a problem because I can't say that I walked on Sunday and Wednesday because these are single answer option radio buttons. So that's not going to work. So if I come back to my edit matrix, which is the pencil up in the top of the matrix itself, if I click on that, there is an option here for answer format. Notice it says single answer radio button, but I can make that a checkbox. So if I make that a checkbox and save it, now we'll see that yes, I could walk any day of the week that I want. Now, if you had a question where you wanted to rate something 1 through 5, then you would want the radio buttons and not checkboxes. You only want one response. So the matrix will do whatever you want it to do. You just have to decide if it's a checkbox or a radio button. Okay, I'm going to scroll all the way up to the top, return to my list of instruments, which would take me back to my online designer. And now I'm going to click on my consent form, which I've created. We'll add a couple fields in there just so we get an idea of the different kinds of fields that we can collect. So I'm going to add a field here. This is going to be yes and no, a yes-no field. And I'm just going to ask, has the consent been receive. Oh, and my variable name just typed in for me, so I do want to uncheck that box going forward. It's okay for now. Now you see yes and no is 1 and 0. It's also grayed out for your choices. If you want no to be 1 and yes to be 0, then don't use the yes-no option. Use radio buttons yourself and define them yourself. The only option for yes-no is what you see in the grayed out area. So if I save it, looks like this. Now, one thing to point out, once you start asking a lot of questions with option buttons, sometimes it might be nice for space saving to align them a little differently. So if I come back to my consent received here, there is a custom alignment option. And it is set by default to right justified and vertical. If I change that to right justified horizontal and save it, looks like that and saves a little time. Some people like that better. Let's say that you're doing a project where you are going to use a tablet or a phone and you want to really shove it off to the left. You can do that. We'll go back in here so that you see the other two options. I'm going to left justify it and make it vertical. I'll save this. You can see it's now up and down, really jamming it off to the left. Or if I want, I could do left justified horizontal, and it looks like that. So other options, and again, these are simply design options for you. It doesn't affect the data, obviously, so I'll just make this right horizontal now. Save. Underneath consent received, I'll add a field. I'm going to make this a file upload field, okay? File upload, and I'll say that this is consent form upload. This would give it some variable name. This would give me the ability to take a hard copy of a consent, scan it, attach it to my record for that particular subject, and then the monitor comes in and she wants to see, she wants to see the consent form, and it's acceptable to have it in your project. She can just look at it right here, and if I save it, it will create a link that you'll be able to use to upload the document, and I'll demonstrate this here in just a few minutes. I'm going to add a field under consent form, and I'm going to make this a signature field. So the signature field is right above the file upload. Okay, and I'll put signature, variable name, some kind. Save it. Okay, now I've got a place that I get a signature. I'll show that to you. I can't demonstrate this in design, but I will demonstrate it when we add some data here in just a second. Finally, I'm going to add a notes box. Okay, and I'm going to call this comments. Only for my variable name, I'm going to call this consent comments. Tell you why here in a second. I'm going to save it, and it looks like this. Now, I'm not a fan of how this looks. To me, it offends my sense of space. There's all this wasted area. It's like, that's crazy. So I'm going to come back in here, and all I need to do is change it to any of the left justified options, and now I'm using the whole space for my comments. When I start typing comments, notice a scroll bar appears, so it will give you as much space as you need. Also, if you don't like scrolling through all of your notes, You can click on the little expand option, and it will expand and show you all the notes at once. Now, there are three types of fields I think that you should remember. Dates, others, and comments. The reason I'm saying this is in regards to variable names. Frequently, you have more than one date, you have more than one comment, and you have more than one other. You can only use a variable name once. So get in the habit of being more specific about what one of those is, because when you get your data export, when you see date, what good is that going to do you? You're not going to know what that date refers to. So be specific about your date or about your other. The other thing I want to mention about notes, others, text boxes generally, but mostly about notes, because people like to, or comments, whatever, people like to put them in because they catch everything that they missed. Just remember, you cannot analyze text boxes, text fields like that, notes boxes, others. They're great for reference, but as far as the analyzation, you're constantly trying to make your statistician's life and your life easier by driving as many of your questions as possible towards fixed answers. There's so many ways of doing that, and that gives your analysis, makes it so much easier for you and or whoever's doing it for you. All right, so we've gotten that far. We now want to add some data. It's no good to know how to create these forms. We don't know how to add data to them. So remember that I said on the left, that's how you talk to your project after you have built it. There is an Add Edit Records link right there. I click on the Add Edit Record link, and it gives me the option to add a new record. If I click on the Add New Record, it takes me to my record homepage for my first subjects. Subjects are auto-numbered incrementally, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you could change that, by the way. You could give it your own number, but we won't for this class. So record number 1, I'm going to click on the status for the screening form, this little circlet, and that will open up my instrument. And here is my nice form that I created, all ready for data. So I'm just going to enter a little bit of data. And pop in a little bit of data here, so look at it. And now there is a field that you did not create at the very bottom. It's called complete. It allows you to indicate whether or not you are finished with data entry on that form. So in this case, I will say I have completed data entry. I will save and exit my form. It will take me back to my subject number. And I can see here that in green, here's my legend up here. In green, it means I have completed entering data for the screening form for that particular subject. If I go to my consent form, click on that little circlet, takes me to my consent form. Consent form is received. Upload document. So a little bit more about the upload document. If I click on it, it's going to just open up this little thing that says choose my file, and I'll pick something. Uh, okay, it's uploaded. Now, you can upload any file up to 20 gigabytes. So if you want to upload an EKG, if you want to upload an MRI, an X-ray, whatever you want to upload, you can upload to this file type. It's the same with Send It, except in this case, if somebody is logged in, they can just click on it. It will automatically open it. Having said that, it will open it as long as you have software to read it. So if I put a PDF on here and you're collaborating with somebody over here and they try to open it, they don't have Acrobat on their computer, they're not going to be able to read it. Just because it's a PDF doesn't mean that it's universally accessible to people. Signature. Okay, so this is great if you have touchscreen. Always wanted to do this and I always forget. All right, add signature. If you have a touchscreen, well, I don't, it does work this way. I'll have to work on that touchscreen. But once you do it, save your signature, then you've got a signature. Then comments we've already played around with. Now, notice that you do have an option here on this drop-down. They're next to the save and exit. There are save and something options besides that. So you could save and stay on the record, save and exit the record, or you can save and go to the next record. So if I save and go to the next record, it's going to take me, in this case, since there is no next record, it gives me the chance to add a new record. I'm at subject number 2. I'm going to go to my screening form and I'll enter some information. And I'm going to come down here and I'm not done. I'm going to save and exit the form yet. I'm going to come back later and finish it. And here's where I'm going to get a little pop-up that says, I did not enter data into the field that I said was required. It did save my data, but it's alerting me that I have a field that's missing required data. So I could just ignore this and leave this record. And now I want to show you the record status dashboard. The record status dashboard is where I manage all my information about my participants in my project. If I click on that, I can see that I have green and red and blank circlets. The green means I'm complete, the red means I'm incomplete, and the circlet means I haven't even started yet for these instruments. So if I were to come back to my consent form for subject 1 and say that it's complete and exit and go over to my record status dashboard, now I can at a glance see what I have left to do. Now, it is a little bit difficult when you are managing your project to know who is 1 and 2, who's record number 1 and 2. And like you want to go back and you want to say, oh yeah, I wanted to make an edit on Tom Jones. What number is he? So there's a little tweak you can do. This is not something that is out of the box. This is something you can do though. If we go to the project setup, and I'm going to get at the project setup up here on the left, I can click on this link for project setup. And if I scroll down here into the middle, there is a button called Additional Customizations. Okay? I click on the Additional Customizations. The very first option here is Set a Custom Record Label. I want to select that option, click on that box, and it lights up this text field. Now, what I want to do is return the values of the first name and last name. To do that, I take the variable name and put it in square brackets. All right, there's an example right below if you ever forget this. But I'm going to put a left square bracket and say first name. And this is why I told you to type the variable name exactly the way I did so this would work for you. So first name in square brackets with the underscore between first and name. Then a space and then a left square bracket and last underscore name. Okay, those are my two variables, first name and last name. I'm going to save it and then come back to my record status dashboard. And notice now I've got the names showing up. And this will carry forward into some of your reports or whatever. So it's a nice, and you can reference any variable. So if you wanted to just show, gender, that was important, or date of birth, whatever you wanted to show, you could do that and put these out here. So that just helps you manage these. So let's now look at user rights. Again, user rights, I'm going to grab from on my left menu. I want to talk to my project here. I'm going to click on the user rights, and you are already set up with user rights, but I want to add somebody. So to do that, click the box here that says add with custom rights, and then we'll take a look at what permissions you can give to somebody. If you know somebody who has a REDCap account, start typing their name in there and you will see them. If you don't know anybody, you can put my name in. I'm going to start typing somebody's name, and I will select them, and then I'll add them with custom rights. Okay, so let's walk through these custom rights real quick. Project design and setup. This means that you can do anything that we've done so far architecturally. You can create any instruments, change any fields, anything like that. User rights is what we're doing right now. We are assigning people to the project. We're associating them to the project. We're giving them permissions. Right below this here is data exports. This is where you would decide if somebody can export identified data, full data set, no access at all, or there are two kinds of de-identification options, tagged or de-identified, and you can read about de-identified. This is a stricter de-identification process. I'm going to scroll down here and see there is create records, which is pretty standard. You probably want people to be able to do data entry. Then there's delete records. So I want you to know that even though you created the project, when it comes time for you to delete a record, you're going to go crazy trying to figure out how to do it because you don't have permission by default, but you can give yourself permission. So I recommend, if you think about it, give yourself delete record permission, and then you won't be going crazy and then emailing me and saying, how the heck do I delete a record? You can notify somebody of their permissions. I'm going to uncheck that because this poor woman, I associate her all projects. Screening for this is data entry rights for the instrument itself. So you can selectively decide if someone can see an instrument, read only, or view and edit. So you can control that on an instrument level basis. Once you're ready, you add them, and now you can scroll across and see their rights. When the time comes and you want to export your data, there is an option here called Data Exports, Reports, and Stats. So this is how you're going to get your data out once you've added it. I'm going to click on the Data Exports, Reports, and Stats, and it will take me to an option here where you can create reports, which is a different class. But for this, we're just going to export all the data and kind of look at the options that we get for this, and then you're going to see the effect of the biostatistician. Click on that, and now you can see you can export your data in all these different formats. So if you're working with somebody or you want to analyze in R or SPSS, just select that option, and it will export as that file type. You can remove, you can de-identify right here and change delimiter characteristics on the export, but we're just going to grab this Microsoft Excel raw data and click on export. Okay, at this point, all you have done is prepare the file for viewing. You have not actually downloaded it so that you can actually see it. You have to click on the little icon for that, and I'm using Chrome, so download it to the bottom left. If you're using Firefox, it's up on the top. And if you're using Explorer, then you've got something to see if you want to run it. So if I open this up, we will see our data, and here are our variable names at the top. Here are our records underneath, along with the data. What I do want to point out is an area like this which is checkboxes, any kind of checkboxes. The data exports in columns for each option so that you can analyze, again, this is for statisticians, you can analyze easily those responses that were number 1, number 2, or number 3. They're all zeros unless there's been a selection, in which case it's 1. Now, you look at this and you're wondering what is race 1, what is race 2? And yeah, that's a limitation of this. Statistics programs generally give you a more three-dimensional view where you can see not only the data and the variable, but the data label, but Excel does not. If you're really hard-pressed and you wanted to try and figure out how you could see what those are, you could do another export, and this time do the labels. The labels I find are pretty useless for any kind of analysis. But if we look at it, you can see that the actual labels are at the top, and if I copy them and then insert those copied cells, now I can see what my choice is for these. So it's just an option that you can do to help take a look at these things. I feel like I've not answered a question somewhere along the line that I said I would. Does anybody have a question? It jumps right out at them. If not, then we have 2 minutes left. Let me try and remember if I have missed anything that's important. Get to my designer. Screening. I think we're good. So that's the beginning class. Thanks you all for attending, whether you're here, thank you very much, or you're online. I hope I answered all your questions. if you have any further questions, redcap@email.arizona.edu is our mailbox, and we are watching it through business hours, and one of us usually checks it over the weekend. So we frequently get new requests for accounts. So if you fill out the form, it goes directly to our mailbox, redcap@email.arizona.edu. Also, I can't stress enough the value of the Red Zone meetings. We try to make them fun. Yeah, if there's no questions, then we wait just a bit to make sure nobody has a question or nobody shows up. But then probably by 10 after, we'll start showing you something that's kind of fun. So thank you all for coming, and hopefully I'll see some of you in the class tomorrow. So thank you all, and I'll talk to you soon.